The silence in the command room was heavy as the massive gates of the Galactic Council Station finally came into view. Captain John Davis stood on the bridge of the USS Dakota, watching the enormous structure grow larger through the main screen. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the armrest of his command chair until his knuckles turned white. 3 months late, Lieutenant Steve Parker said quietly from the navigation console. He didn't need to add anything more. Everyone on the bridge knew what that meant. Outside the viewports, they could see the other delegations already docked. The Kretak fleet was unmistakable with their sleek silver ships that looked more like art pieces than war vessels. The Varathi crystal ships sparkled even in the distant starlight, their ancient technology a mystery to everyone. And there were the Zephan dreadnoughts, massive war machines covered in scars and weapons that spoke of countless battles. Compared to these massive fleets, Earth's small group of ships looked pitiful. The Dakota, the Phoenix, the Liberty, and 3 smaller escort vessels. Each ship bore the same strange marks and discoloration, though anyone looking closely might notice they looked more like old stains than battle damage. Ambassador Lydia Brooks entered the bridge, her diplomatic uniform crisp despite their long journey. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, practicing speeches and studying alien customs. None of that preparation had included being 3 months late to their first meeting with the galactic community. "Captain, we need to dock soon," she said, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. "The longer we wait, the worse it looks." John nodded slowly. He reached up and touched the comm button on his chair. "This is Captain Davis to all ships. Prepare for docking. Remember, we're representing all of Earth here. Act professional." The docking procedure went smoothly, though John noticed several alien vessels moving away from their approach vector. Whether this was normal procedure or deliberate disrespect, he couldn't tell. As they secured to the station, he could see alien faces pressed against viewports watching them. The docking bay was massive, designed to accommodate ships from dozens of different species. The human delegation walked across the metal floor, their boots echoing in the cavernous space. Alien workers stopped their tasks to stare, making clicking and chirping sounds among themselves. The council chamber was even more impressive, a sphere of holographic displays and floating platforms, with delegates from various species arranged in a complex hierarchy. The humans were directed to the smallest platform, tucked away in a corner where they could barely see the main proceedings. Vex Thor, the council leader, appeared as a shimmering hologram, its crystalline body pulsed with colors as it spoke, its words translated by their earpieces. "The Terran delegation arrives at last," Vex Thor announced, its tone carrying clear disapproval throughout the chamber. 3 standard months after the appointed time. Several delegates clicked and chirped what could only be laughter. Tarvex, the Kretak representative, made a gesture that their briefing materials had identified as contempt. Ambassador Brooks stepped forward. "Honored Council, I apologize for our delay. We encountered unexpected challenges on our journey here. Earth is eager to join the galactic community and contribute our knowledge and resources." "Challenges?" Tarvex interrupted, its melodic voice somehow managing to sound condescending. "Perhaps the Terrans are simply not advanced enough to navigate standard space lanes." More clicking laughter echoed through the chamber. John felt his jaw tighten, but Brooks continued calmly. "We are prepared to demonstrate Earth's capabilities and discuss trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and technological exchange." Vex Thor's hologram shifted to a deep purple. "Terrans will accept the assignments determined by this council. Your tardiness shows disrespect for galactic protocols. You will receive territory in the dead zones, sectors 7 through 12. Trade agreements will be determined after you prove your worth." The dead zones. John had reviewed the star charts during their journey, vast areas of space marked as uninhabitable, with no resources or strategic value. Essentially, they were being given the worst possible assignment. "With respect," Brooks said, trying to maintain diplomatic protocol, "perhaps a more detailed discussion of territorial assignments would be beneficial. We've prepared comprehensive data on Earth's military capabilities and resource contributions." The Zephan delegate, a massive creature that looked like it was made of rock and metal, spoke for the first time. Its voice was like grinding stone. "Show us these capabilities." Brooks nodded to John, who activated a portable holographic display. It showed clean images of Earth's fleet, technical specifications, and military rankings. Standard diplomatic presentation materials. The chamber fell quiet for a moment, then erupted in what was clearly laughter. The Vorathi delegates' ancient form vibrated with amusement. "These are your war vessels?" Tarvex asked, making that contemptuous gesture again. "How charming. They barely qualify as transport ships by our standards." John noticed Steve Parker's hand move toward his sidearm. "Then stop. Good discipline." They had all been briefed on maintaining calm under provocation. "We appreciate the Council's evaluation," Brooks said smoothly. "Earth is eager to learn and grow within the galactic community." Vexthor's colors shifted to a dismissive yellow. "You may begin patrols of your assigned sectors immediately. This council expects regular reports. Any violations of galactic law will result in immediate expulsion from this body." The meeting continued with other delegates discussing matters that didn't include Earth. The humans stood on their small platform, ignored by everyone except for occasional glances that ranged from dismissive to openly mocking. When they were finally dismissed, the human delegation walked back to their ships in silence. Only when they were aboard the Dakota with the airlock sealed behind them did anyone speak. "Well," Steve said, removing his dress uniform jacket, "that went about as expected." John moved to the observation port, looking out at the alien vessels. Their technology was clearly superior, their ships larger, their presence in the galaxy established. But as he watched, he noticed something. The alien ships were pristine, gleaming with pride and power. The human ships, by contrast, were stained. Dark marks covered the hull plates. Some areas showed hurried repairs, and one section of the Dakota still bore the distinctive pattern of something that had burned through the armor and been patched from inside. "Captain," Steve said quietly, "should I tell the crew about our assignments?" John turned back to his officers. Lydia was already at a terminal, reviewing the data they'd been given. The dead zones weren't just worthless territory. According to their own reading, something was very wrong with those sectors. High energy readings, distorted communications, and worst of all, no ships that entered certain areas ever reported back. "Tell them to prepare for patrol duty," John said simply. "And Steve?" "Yes, sir?" "Make sure maintenance gets those hull stains cleaned up. We want to look professional for the next council meeting." Steve nodded, though they both knew the stains would come back. They always did. It was just a matter of time before the humans encountered whatever made the dead zone so dead. As the human ships detached from the station and set course for their assigned territories, the other delegates watched from their observation decks. The humans departed without ceremony, their small fleet disappearing into the darkness of space. In the council chamber, discussions continued about various topics. Trade routes were adjusted, territorial disputes were resolved, and new technologies were shared among the established members. "The Terrans seem quiet," the Vorathi delegate observed during a break in proceedings. "All new species are overwhelmed at first," Tarvex replied dismissively. "They'll learn their place soon enough." Vexthor's hologram pulsed with a thoughtful green. "Did anyone else notice their ships?" "Primitive designs," the Zephan delegate rumbled. "Barely space-worthy." "No," Vexthor continued. "The markings, the stains, those weren't decorative." The chamber fell quiet for a moment. "Probably just poor maintenance," Tarvex said confidently. "New species rarely understand proper ship care." The discussion moved on to other matters, and the mystery of the human ships was forgotten. After all, what could a species that arrived 3 months late possibly know about real combat? Outside the station, the human fleet was already adjusting course for Sector 7. Aboard each ship, crews prepared for what they knew was coming. Weapons were checked, systems were tested, and medical bays were stocked with extra supplies. In the Dakota's medical bay, Dr. Nancy Wright examined the surgical equipment one more time. The tools were well used, and despite her best efforts, some still carried faint stains that wouldn't wash out. She knew from experience that they would be needed again soon. On the bridge, John sat in his command chair, studying the tactical displays. The dead zone showed areas of complete sensor blackout, regions where even quantum communications failed. His crew moved around him with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this too many times before. "Captain," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving automated warnings about our new patrol area. Standard safety protocols." "Anything specific?" "The usual. Avoid certain coordinates. Maintain minimum safe distance from anomalies. Report any unusual readings immediately." John nodded. Warnings that meant nothing because they didn't explain what the dangers actually were. But he and his crew already knew what lurked in the darker corners of space. They had spent months fighting their way through it just to reach the council station. "Set course for Sector 7, he ordered. "All ships maintain formation, shields at full power." As the human fleet accelerated toward their assigned territory, the council station grew smaller behind them. None of the other delegates bothered to watch them leave. Why would they? Just another new species being shown their place in the galactic order. Aboard the Dakota, Steve Parker stood at the tactical station, running final checks on the weapon systems. He paused at the secondary display, which showed the external sensor readings. There it was again, that slight energy fluctuation at the edge of their detection range. He'd seen it before, too many times. "Steve," John called from the command chair, "how long until we reach the first coordinate?" 12 hours at current speed, Captain." "Good. Notify all ships to run full diagnostics before we arrive. I want everyone ready." "Aye, sir." The crew continued with their preparations, their movements practiced and precise. They had done this before many times. The council thought they were giving Earth the worst possible assignment, but they didn't understand. The human crews had spent months clearing exactly these types of zones just to reach civilized space. As the ships disappeared into the darkness, the last thing visible from the station was the faint trail of their engines. And perhaps, if anyone had been looking closely enough, they might have noticed that the dark stains on the hull seemed to pulse slightly in the starlight. But no one was looking that closely. The aliens had already dismissed the humans as unimportant. They would learn their mistake soon enough. 2 weeks after their first council meeting, Captain Mary Johnson stood in the requisitions office aboard the council station. She had been waiting for 4 hours, holding a simple request form for replacement parts. The queue number on the screen still hadn't moved. The office was designed for multiple species with seating areas and interfaces that could accommodate any alien physiology. Mary chose to stand, partly because all the chairs seemed designed for creatures with more or fewer joints than humans, and partly because sitting felt wrong after so many months of combat readiness. "Next," the Varathi clerk announced in its musical tone. 3 beings ahead of Mary filed forward, receiving instant approval for their requests. Complex technical equipment, rare materials, entire ship systems, all approved with a casual wave of crystalline appendages. Finally, Mary's number appeared on the screen. "Request for standard hull plating. Grade 5, she said, handing over the pad. "Our ship sustained minor damage during our journey here." The clerk examined the request, its crystal body dimming slightly. "Terran vessels, hull damage, denied." "Denied?" Mary kept her voice level. "It's standard maintenance material. Terrans have not established resource credits. Furthermore, damage. Claims must be verified by Council Inspection Team. Processing time, 90 standard days." Mary felt the familiar weight of frustration. "We've already submitted damage reports from our journey. The battle scans clearly show..." "Battle scans?" The clerk's color shifted to what Mary had learned was confusion. "Terran vessels reported no combat encounters en route to station. Of course we did. Every single ship, denied." "Next." Mary walked out of the office, her jaw clenched. This was the 5th department that had rejected their basic requests. Food synthesizer components, medical supplies, even simple data access, all denied for reasons that seemed to change every time. In the corridor, she met General Henry Clark and diplomat Susan Taylor. Henry looked even grimmer than usual, his gray hair making him appear older than his 45 years. "Let me guess," Mary said. "More denials?" The Kretak Trade Commission refused to even review our planetary resource surveys, Susan replied, her usual diplomatic calm fraying. They suggested we learn better survey techniques from established species. The Ziffin wouldn't grant us access to standard tactical databases, Henry added. Apparently, our military structure is too primitive to understand their basic combat manuals. The three humans walked together toward their temporary quarters. The station corridors were busy with alien species, all seeming to move with purpose, while the humans struggled through basic administrative tasks. I don't understand this, Mary said quietly. We've met every requirement they listed. Our documentation is complete, our ships passed all technical inspections, and we've already deployed to our assigned sectors. It's not about requirements, Henry said grimly. It's about making us understand our place. They want us to give up and go home. Susan stopped at an observation window, looking out at the human ships docked along the outer rim. The Dakota, Phoenix, and Liberty looked tiny compared to the massive alien vessels, but Susan could see the human crews working tirelessly on maintenance and repairs. Look at our people, she said softly. They've been working non-stop since we arrived. Chief Martinez hasn't slept in 30 hours. Dr. Wright is running diagnostics on medical equipment that shouldn't need it. Mary followed her gaze and noticed something she hadn't paid attention to before. The human maintenance crews moved differently than the alien workers. Faster, more urgent, constantly checking their surroundings, like soldiers expecting an attack. Meanwhile, in the Council diplomatic zone, the daily session was beginning. The humans were required to attend, though they rarely spoke. Ambassador Lydia Brooks sat on their small platform reviewing notes that she knew wouldn't matter. Today's topic was resource allocation for the outer territories, the same territories the humans had been assigned to patrol. The dead zones remain. Unproductive, Vexthor announced. Sectors 7 through 12 show no resource potential and minimal strategic value. The Terrans patrol those zones now, Tarvex added with what might have been amusement. Perhaps they will find some use for empty space. The Zephan delegate rumbled thoughtfully. Unusual energy readings reported from Sector 9, possibly residual quantum fluctuations. Natural phenomena, the Varathi representative dismissed. Those sectors are known for sensor ghosts, nothing of concern. Lydia felt her earpiece activate. It was John Davis communicating from the Dakota. Ambassador, we've just completed our first full patrol of Sector 7, requesting permission to file our report. She tapped her acknowledgement, then raised her hand to speak. The council chamber quieted. Earth would like to submit our preliminary patrol report for Sectors 7 and 8. Unnecessary, Vexthor responded quickly. Initial patrols rarely provide useful data. Wait until you've completed multiple cycles. With respect, Lydia continued, our findings may be relevant to the current discussion. We've detected several anomalies that Terrans may not contribute to tactical discussions until they complete orientation period, Tarvex interrupted. Standard procedure for new species. Learn before attempting to teach. The other delegates clicked and chirped in agreement. Lydia sat back, noting that the orientation period hadn't been mentioned at any previous session. The rules seemed to change whenever humans tried to participate. After the session, the human delegation gathered in their quarters. The room was cramped compared to those assigned to other species, with basic furnishings that required them to adapt rather than being adapted for them. They're not going to let us contribute anything, Henry said bluntly, no matter what we find out there. I managed to get 5 minutes with a Vorathite trade advisor, Susan reported. He admitted that dead zones are usually assigned to new species as a test. Apparently, most give up after a few months and request reassignment to civilized sectors. So it's a hazing ritual, Mary concluded. More than that, John said, entering the room. It's designed to break us. They want us to come running back begging for better treatment. Then they'll know they can control us. The group sat in silence for a moment. Through the small viewport, they could see the station's main docking area where alien crews moved around their pristine ships with casual efficiency. Captain, Lydia said carefully, Steve Parker mentioned that our ships have unusual markings, stains that won't come out. Is there something about our journey here that I should know? John exchanged glances with Mary and Henry. The military personnel shared some communication that the diplomats couldn't read. Nothing relevant to council proceedings, John replied diplomatically. But that night, when most of the station was in its sleep cycle, Bill Martinez worked in the Dakota's engineering bay. He was cleaning weapons systems that officially weren't supposed to need cleaning. The energy signatures were all wrong for standard maintenance. "Hey, Bill," a voice called. It was Nancy Wright, the ship's doctor. "You still up?" "Yeah, you?" She held up a data pad. "Medical supply inventory. We're running low on trauma kits." "Again?" "Fourth time this month, and the council won't approve our requisition for more." Bill paused in his work, looking at the energy weapon he was calibrating. Its setting went far higher than standard military specifications. "You know, Doc, other species don't seem to run through medical supplies this fast." "Other species don't seem to run through much of anything this fast," Nancy agreed. "Have you noticed their ships? Nothing ever seems to break. Nothing needs constant repair." "Yeah." Bill returned to his work. "But their ships don't have the same modifications ours do." Nancy left soon after, but Bill continued working. Near dawn, he discovered something interesting. The energy readings from the weapon's power core showed traces of something that shouldn't exist. Exotic particles that, according to Council technology databases, were purely theoretical. He made a note to report it to Captain Davis, then decided against it. Some things were better documented quietly. Across the station, similar scenes played out. Human crews working through the night, maintaining equipment that seemed to require constant attention. Alien observers occasionally asked questions, but the humans offered only standard explanations: preventive maintenance, calibration checks, standard military procedure. In the command center of the council station, automatic systems recorded these patterns: unusual power draws, excessive maintenance cycles, modified equipment signatures. The data was flagged for review but never reached anyone's attention. After all, new species always had adjustment periods. 3 weeks into their station rotation, the pattern was clear. Every human request faced maximum bureaucratic resistance. Every report was dismissed, every suggestion ignored. The other species continued their business without acknowledging the humans beyond basic protocol. Yet the human ships kept departing for their patrols, returning with their crews showing signs of fatigue that went beyond standard duty cycles. Ship rotations that should have been routine seemed to leave maintenance crews working overtime. Medical staff documented injury rates that seemed excessive for peaceful patrol duty. "They're testing us," Susan concluded during one of their evening meetings. "Everything about this is designed to see how much we'll tolerate before we break." "The question is," Mary said grimly, "what happens when they realize we've been through worse than anything they can devise?" John was quiet for a moment, then stood by the viewport. Outside, the alien fleets floated in perfect formation, their pristine hulls reflecting the station's lights. "They'll keep pushing," he said finally, "until they understand why our ships look different, why our crews act different, why we don't break. And then they'll wish they'd listened when we tried to warn them about the dead zones." The room fell silent. Outside, the station continued its endless rotation, maintaining the fiction that humanity was just another new species learning its place in the galactic community. In Sector 8, the USS Liberty reported another anomaly. In Sector 9, energy readings spiked beyond normal parameters. And in Sector 7, something that shouldn't exist had been detected at the edge of their patrol range. The Council databases automatically filed these reports under new species training data and marked them for review in 6 months, standard time. By then, according to historical patterns, the humans would either accept their place in the hierarchy or voluntarily withdraw from Council membership. What the databases didn't account for was the possibility that humanity wasn't like other species, that their late arrival hadn't been a failure of navigation, but something else entirely. In the quiet hours before dawn, Chief Martinez completed his weapon modifications. Dr. Wright organized her medical supplies, and Captain Davis reviewed patrol reports that no one at the Council would ever read carefully enough to understand. The bureaucratic nightmare continued, but so did human resistance. Not through protests or demands, but through relentless preparation for something the aliens couldn't see coming. Something that had already killed many humans on their journey to the Council. Something that waited in the dead zones, patient and hungry. Something that the Council would eventually come to understand was the real reason why humanity's ships carried the stains of war, and why their crews could endure any administrative torture the bureaucrats could devise. Because compared to what waited in the dark between stars, Council paperwork was nothing at all. The first disappearance happened on day 28. The Kretok exploration vessel Silver Wind had ventured too close to Sector 9 during a routine asteroid survey. When they failed to report at their scheduled check-in, the Council dispatched search vessels. They found nothing. Not even debris. On day 31, a Varathi scientific probe lost contact while approaching Sector 11. The last transmission was a brief burst of static and what sounded like screaming, though Varathi claimed their probes didn't carry audio equipment. By day 35, 3 more ships had gone silent in the vicinity of human patrol zones. In the Council chambers, the atmosphere changed. The dismissive chatter died down. Delegates spoke in hushed tones, glancing toward the small human platform with something that wasn't quite suspicion, but wasn't friendship either. Unusual patterns, Vexthor announced during the emergency session. Ships approaching Terran. Patrol zones experience communication failures. Coincidence, Tarvek said, but its melodic voice carried less confidence. The dead zones are known for sensor interference. 5 ships, the Zephan delegate rumbled. 5 ships in 7 days. This exceeds normal anomaly rates by 300%. Ambassador Lydia Brooks stood up. Earth offers full assistance in search and rescue operations. Our ships are already on patrol in those sectors. The chamber fell completely silent. It was the first time in weeks that anyone had acknowledged the human presence beyond basic protocol. Terran vessels will maintain current assignments, Vexthor responded after a pause. Search operations will be conducted by established species. With respect, Lydia continued, our crews have been patrolling those areas for weeks. We have detailed sensor logs and denied. Terrans lack advanced search capabilities. The session ended abruptly. The human delegation filed out, aware of the stares following them. In the corridor, they were stopped by an unusual sight, an unescorted alien approaching them. It was Rix, a young Varathi engineer who had occasionally asked polite questions about human technology. Its crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. Ambassadors, Rix spoke quietly. Forgive the interruption. May I speak privately? Henry and Susan exchanged glances. Unofficial contact between species was technically allowed but rarely practiced. Of course, Lydia said. They moved to a small alcove off the main corridor. Rix's glow dimmed to almost invisible. The missing ships, it began hesitantly. They were all investigating energy patterns, similar to readings reported from your patrol zones. Go on, Henry encouraged. Council leadership says the disappearances are unrelated to Terran presence, but the technical staff disagrees. We see correlations, patterns. What kind of patterns? Susan asked. Power spikes preceding contact loss, gravitational anomalies, and this is difficult to explain. The final transmissions contain data that shouldn't exist. Before they could respond, Rix noticed other aliens in the corridor and quickly moved away. Forgive me, I must go. But be careful. Something is not right. The humans returned to their quarters, finding John Davis waiting for them. His expression was grimmer than usual. We intercepted transmissions from the search teams, he said without preamble. They found something. The missing ships? Parts of them, twisted metal, hull sections that show damage patterns unlike anything in Council military databases. The search teams are trying to keep it quiet, but their crews are scared. That night, Captain Lisa Brown returned from patrol with the USS Phoenix. Her crew moved through decontamination procedures with mechanical precision, their faces showing a weariness that went beyond normal fatigue. Dr. Nancy Wright was waiting in the medical bay when the first crew members arrived. Anything to report? She asked, running standard scans. Just routine patrol, Doc. the chief communications officer replied. His vital signs suggested otherwise. Elevated stress hormones, irregular heartbeat, dilated pupils, and the new hull damage. Asteroid debris. Happens all the time. Nancy nodded, though the scorch patterns she'd observed looked nothing like asteroid damage. She'd seen those marks before, during their journey to Council space. Burn patterns from weapons that officially didn't exist. In the command room, Lisa briefed John privately. "We found the Silver Wind," she said simply. "And?" "It was torn apart. Hull breached from the inside. Whatever killed them knew how to bypass Kretak shielding." John was quiet for a moment. "Casualties? 37 total." "But John, that's not the worst part. We found their distress logs. They were attacked by something that matched their ship exactly. Like fighting a mirror image." The implications hung in the air. The threats they had fought on their way to Council space were adapting, learning, getting stronger. Meanwhile, in the Council's military planning center, automated analysis systems were processing the search team data. The computers flagged multiple anomalies, weapon signatures that didn't match any known species, hull damage patterns suggesting directed energy weapons far more advanced than Council standards, and most disturbing, biological remains that defied classification. The duty officer, a young Zephan named Crack, reviewed the flags. His training said to escalate unusual findings, but his experience said some things were better handled quietly. He decided to run one more analysis before alerting his superiors. The results made his rocky hide shift color with concern. The biological samples contained human DNA, but they also contained something else, something that somehow incorporated the genetic markers of whatever species they consumed. The Silver Wind crew's tissue samples showed Kretak DNA merged with unknown organic compounds, as if something had been studying them, copying them, becoming them. Crack reached for the alert system, then stopped. The humans had been in those sectors for weeks. If these things could copy biological patterns and if human DNA was present, he needed more information before triggering full emergency protocols. Aboard the Dakota, Captain Davis convened his senior staff. Mary Johnson, Lisa Brown, Henry Clark, and the ship commanders formed a circle in the war room. The displays showed tactical readouts that civilian diplomats weren't supposed to see. "Situation is escalating," John began. "The things we fought getting here are now in Council space, and they're not just attacking anymore. They're learning." "How bad is it?" Mary asked. Lisa answered. "Silver Wind wasn't destroyed randomly. Whatever killed them had studied Kretak shield technology, learned their communication frequencies, and used their own systems against them. The aliens have no defense against something that can become them. Recommendations? We need to inform the Council," Henry said. "Warn them about what we've encountered." "They won't listen," Lisa pointed out. "We've been trying to file reports for weeks. They think we're too primitive to have meaningful tactical intelligence." "What about the disappearances? Surely they blame us," Mary interrupted. "The timing is too convenient. Humans arrive, ships start disappearing in human patrol zones. They're already suspicious." John nodded slowly. "So we're on our own." Again. The room fell silent. Outside, the Council station continued its normal operations, blissfully unaware that its newest members were already fighting a war that could destroy everything they'd built over millennia. In her laboratory, Nancy Wright examined tissue samples that had arrived with the latest casualty report. Officially, they were human injuries from patrol duty. Unofficially, they showed defensive wounds from attacks by creatures that shouldn't exist. The wounds were healing incorrectly with cellular patterns that suggested attempted replication, as if the attackers weren't just trying to kill, but to learn, to copy, to become. She sealed the samples and marked them for deep analysis. The results would take hours, but she suspected she already knew what they would show. The next morning brought more disappearances. A Zephon battlecruiser, the Iron Mountain, failed to complete its patrol. This time, the Council couldn't ignore. Zephon vessels were considered invulnerable, their military technology the finest in the galaxy. The emergency council session was held behind closed doors, but the human delegation was summoned. "Explain," Vexthor demanded. Its crystalline form now a deep red that indicated anger. "Why ships fail only near Terran zones? We've been trying to submit reports about," Lydia began. Silence. "Evidence suggests Terran involvement in recent disappearances. Your vessels will submit to full inspection. Your crews will be interrogated." "That's impossible," Henry stepped forward. "Our ships have been in constant communication with Council monitoring systems. We've been following all assigned patrol routes. Yet only ships approaching your positions disappear." The Zephon delegate suddenly rumbled, cutting off the debate. "Combat alert. Priority 1. Energy signatures detected. Something approaches the station." Alarms began wailing throughout the council chamber. Displays lit up showing massive readings just outside the station's defensive perimeter. But there was nothing visible on any screens. Then the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. The displays flickered back to life, showing impossible readings. 20 ships had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the station. Ships with energy signatures matching various council species perfectly. But the real ships were either in the council chamber or accounted for through tracking systems. "Mirror ships," Vexthor announced, its voice carrying the first hint of fear. "Impossible. Purely theoretical." The human delegation stood calmly, while aliens scrambled for emergency positions. John Davis activated his private comm unit. "All human vessels, this is Delta Protocol. You know what to do." Outside the station, the human ships that had seemed unremarkable for weeks suddenly displayed capabilities that made the aliens freeze in shock. Weapon systems activated that shouldn't exist. Shields engaged at levels far exceeding their rated capacity, and movement patterns that broke known physics. The Dakota Phoenix and Liberty moved to intercept the mirror ships with precision that suggested months of practice against exactly this threat. "Terrans," Vexthor's voice crackled. "Over the general comm, explain your vessel's capabilities. Those modifications are not in your filed specifications." John looked at the council leaders, seeing understanding begin to dawn in their expressions. "With respect," he said calmly, "we tried to warn you. We've been fighting these things for months. They're not just mirrors. They're something else, something that learns from what it kills." The battle outside intensified. Human weapons fired energy patterns that seemed specifically designed to disrupt the mirror ship's copying ability. Alien vessels tried to join the fight but found their own weapons ineffective against enemies that matched their technology perfectly. "How do you know how to fight them?" Tarvex asked. "Because," Ambassador Brooks answered quietly, "we've been doing it since before we reached your space. We weren't late to your meeting. We were delayed fighting these things so they wouldn't follow us here." The council chamber erupted with questions, but they were drowned out by the sound of the battle reaching its climax. Through the viewports they could see the truth. Human ships scarred and stained from months of combat, working in perfect coordination against an enemy the council was only now realizing existed. The blood on humanity's ships wasn't from poor maintenance. It was from a war they had been fighting alone to keep the rest of the galaxy safe. And now, finally, the Council was about to understand what that war had cost and why humanity had never flinched at bureaucratic harassment. They had faced so much worse. The Varathi engineer Zixtal was running emergency diagnostics when its appendage accidentally triggered a human data core. What appeared on the screen made its crystalline form pulse with shock. Holographic recordings filled the repair bay, images of space battles unlike anything in Council archives. Massive creatures tearing through reality itself, ships fighting against odds that defied military doctrine, and humans, bloodied and exhausted, standing their ground against horrors that made the current crisis seem small. Zixtail tried to close the files, but more kept opening. Combat footage from the USS Liberty showed Captain Peter Williams coordinating impossible maneuvers. Medical logs displayed injuries that shouldn't be survivable. After-action reports detailed 3 months of constant warfare in regions Council maps marked as empty space. "Emergency alert," the computer announced. "Automatic data broadcast initiated, broadcasting to all connected systems." Zixtal scrambled to stop the transmission, but human systems were designed differently. The files were already spreading across the station's network, reaching every terminal, every display, every connected device. In the Council Emergency Center, delegates froze as their screens filled with human recordings. The carefully maintained calm shattered as reality forced itself into view. Vexthor watched footage of the Dakota fighting something that twisted through dimensions, its hull breaching while the crew continued firing. This is impossible. These battles occurred in sectors we map as peaceful. Not peaceful, Ambassador Brooks said quietly. Just cleaned up. By us. The Zephan delegate activated an isolated terminal, pulling up its own military databases. Cross-referencing the human battle footage with historical records produced disturbing correlations. Energy signatures match theoretical models of extinct threats, it announced in its grinding voice. Threats we believed destroyed millennia ago. Threats we designed our entire military doctrine to fight, hoping we'd never need it. Extinct threats fighting with current generation technology, Tarvex added, its melodic voice strained. This is not possible. Captain Mary Johnson stepped forward. They're not extinct. They evolve. They learn. They become stronger every time. We fight them. The ships you just saw attacking your station, they're based on technology they learned by destroying others. Your technology. The Council Chamber's main display activated, showing the results of the ongoing battle outside. Human ships moved with precision born of experience, their weapons targeting specific points on the mirror vessels that alien forces couldn't identify. How? Do you know their weak points? The Zephan delegate demanded. Because we've killed them before, Henry Clark answered simply. Hundreds of times. We lost ships, crews, entire colonies learning how to fight them. That's why we were late to your meeting. The data streams continued. Medical files showing Surgeon Mary Chen performing surgery on a crewman whose DNA was being rewritten in real time by alien contamination. Engineering reports detailing how Chief Bill Martinez had invented new weapons specifically for entities that could phase through normal matter. Tactical data proving that humanity had developed countermeasures for threats the Council didn't even know existed. Show them the deep space footage, John Davis said to his communications officer. The largest display activated, showing external camera recordings from 3 months earlier. The Dakota approaching what looked like empty space until massive creatures emerged from the dark between stars. Tentacles the size of space stations, ships that breathed and bled, weapons that bent reality around them. Footage of Lieutenant Steve Parker coordinating point defense while the bridge leaked atmosphere. Of Dr. Nancy Wright operating in zero gravity as the ship spun through impossible maneuvers. Of human Marines in boarding actions against vessels made of organic matter that regenerated faster than they could be damaged. This is your data, Vexthor said, its color shifting to confused. Purple. Why did your reports never mention these encounters? They did, Susan Taylor replied, activating her diplomatic pad. Every report we filed, every request for resources, every tactical briefing we attempted to share, all of it was dismissed, denied or ignored. She displayed the human submission logs, hundreds of detailed reports all marked as primitive species orientation data or new member adjustment period documentation. None had been reviewed by actual council members. We were fighting this war while you were testing our paperwork, skills, Mary Johnson said bluntly. The battle outside reached a critical point. 6 mirror ships remained, their copied systems adapting to human countermeasures. The Council's defensive fleet, despite outnumbering the attackers, suffered losses, as conventional weapons proved ineffective. Captain Davis, Vexthor addressed John directly for the first time with respect. Your ships are severely outgunned. Why do you continue fighting? Because, John replied, watching the tactical display. This is what we do. What we've been doing for months. What we tried to tell you we were doing. He activated the Dakota's command channel. All human vessels execute protocol blackout. The alien delegates watched in amazement as human ships suddenly disappeared from sensors, only to reappear in perfect formation behind the mirror vessels. The attack was swift and coordinated, striking at points that seemed random to alien observers, but followed a pattern learned through costly experience. How is this possible? Tarvex asked. Your technology was judged inferior to ours. It is inferior, Henry admitted. But we've been fighting things that laugh at superior technology. We learned adaptation, we learned survival. We learned to kill monsters with primitive tools because that's all we had. The recordings continued playing on multiple screens. Footage of humanity's journey to council space became a horror story of constant battle, desperate innovation, and sacrifice. Crews stranded on damaged ships holding out for weeks against creatures that hunted through hyperspace. Entire battle groups vanishing, their fate known only through scattered distress signals. This explains the blood, Zixtal said softly. The stains on your ships aren't maintenance failures. No, Nancy Wright confirmed. They're from crew members who died holding the line. From passengers we couldn't save. From things that bleed, but shouldn't exist. We tried to clean them, but some stains don't wash out, some memories don't fade. The battle outside reached its conclusion as the last mirror ship fell to coordinated human fire. The council station's alarms finally stopped wailing, but the silence in the chamber was even more oppressive. Damage report, Vexthor commanded. 37. Council vessels lost, the automated system responded. 43 severely damaged, human casualties 7 wounded, none fatal. The disparity was stark. Council forces, with their advanced technology and superior numbers, had been decimated. Humanity, fighting with primitive ships, had suffered minor casualties. Why didn't you tell us? Vexthor asked, its color now a confused mix of red and blue. Why endure our mockery when you could have revealed this? Would you have believed us? Ambassador Brooks asked gently, a species that arrives late claiming they've been fighting galaxy-threatening monsters that you've never detected? With technology you've already judged as inferior. The council delegates exchanged glances. The question answered itself. The Zephon delegate reviewed its military assessments. Our doctrine requires overwhelming firepower, shock and awe. Your humans practice surgical precision, minimalist efficiency. You fight not to destroy, but to survive. Survival against impossible odds, Tarvex added, its voice carrying newfound respect. This explains your crew behavior. Always alert, always prepared, always assuming the worst. Captain Davis activated the main display one more time. Would you like to see our actual journey logs? Not the sanitized reports we tried to file, the real data. The council watched as humanity's true story unfolded. Week after week of constant combat, ships limping between battles, crews working miracles with damaged systems, memorials for the fallen that lined the corridors of human vessels, battle hymns sung before operations that had no right to succeed, brothers and sisters in arms holding each other as they bled out in space. This is the Terran war doctrine, General Clark explained. Survive today, fight tomorrow, save everyone you can, never give up, never surrender, because the alternative is extinction. Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed with understanding. You weren't testing us during our bureaucratic procedures, we were testing you, and you endured because you've endured worse. Months worse, Mary Johnson confirmed, but we had hope. Hope that reaching council space meant safety, that your advanced technology could help us understand and fight these threats more effectively. Instead, Susan Taylor continued, we found a bureaucracy that couldn't conceive of the threats we'd already faced. So we continued fighting alone, protecting the very species that dismissed us, hoping you'd listen before it was too late. Thaifo. Revelations hung heavy in the chamber. Council species that had prided themselves on technological superiority now understood they'd been living in protected space, sheltered by a species they'd considered primitive. The blood on our ships, Captain Davis said quietly, is from every human who died making sure these things never reached you, from every crew member who held their position while monsters boarded their vessels, from every Marine who went hand to hand with nightmares so their shipmates could seal the bulkheads. He paused, looking at each alien delegate. We tried to warn you, through proper channels, through direct reports, through diplomatic submissions. You taught us patience, you taught us humility. But the creatures didn't care about protocols or procedures. The main screen showed the final frame of the recorded data, a simple message logged by Captain Peter Williams 3 months earlier. just before the Liberty's final battle in deep space. If anyone finds this log, know that humanity will never stop fighting. For ourselves, for each other, for anyone who needs protection, even if they don't know they need it, even if they never ask for it. This is who we are. This is why we survive. The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in profound silence. Outside, human ships maintained defensive positions, their scarred hulls a testament to battles fought in darkness and distance, protecting species that had never known danger existed. "We owe you an apology," Vexthor said finally. "And more than that, we owe you our lives." The human delegation stood quietly, processing the moment they had fought months to reach. Vindication? But at what cost? How many had died to prove a point that bureaucracy had prevented them from making peacefully? "Apologies don't bring back the dead," John Davis said softly. "But maybe now we can work together. Maybe now you'll listen when we report threats. Maybe now the blood on our ships means something." Outside the station, the stars seemed different, less bright, less safe. The council had lost its innocence but gained something perhaps more valuable: the knowledge that protectors watched in the darkness, bleeding so others could sleep peacefully. The war wasn't over. The mirror ships were just one manifestation of threats that evolved faster than solutions could be found. But now, at least, humanity wouldn't have to fight alone. The bureaucratic nightmare had ended. The real war was just beginning. 3 days after the mirror ship attack, the council chamber looked different. The small platform assigned to humans had been moved to the center position, the place of honor. Alien delegates spoke in subdued tones, their earlier dismissiveness replaced by quiet respect. Ambassador Lydia Brooks stood at the new human position, but this time the chamber didn't merely tolerate her presence. It waited for her words. "Earth submits its formal report on threat assessment for Sectors 1 through 24, she announced. This time, no one interrupted. The tactical displays activated, showing detailed maps created from months of human combat experience. Red zones marked areas where reality itself was unstable. Amber regions indicated where mirror entities were known to spawn. Black sectors showed places where entire human battle groups had gone silent. "These are your findings," Vexthor asked, its crystalline form now a respectful green. "Our blood map," Captain Mary Johnson answered simply. "Every red mark cost us a ship. Every black zone took a crew. Every amber warning came from humans who died to send the information." The Zephan delegate, now identified as Supreme Commander, Crack studied the tactical data with professional interest. "Your mapping suggests we've been living inside a protective barrier, that these threats exist in a pattern around council space. Not random luck," General Henry Clark confirmed. "Humanity's route to council space took us through what we call the breach zones, where these things slip through from elsewhere. We fought them because we had to, because they were blocking our path." "And they followed you," Tarvex observed, its melodic voice uncertain for the first time. "They always follow," John Davis said grimly. "That's why we kept fighting, not just for survival, but to keep them contained, to keep them from reaching populated space." The council chamber processed this information. Screens displayed casualty reports, battle analyses, and footage of threats that challenged every understanding of physics and biology. Creatures that existed in multiple dimensions, ships that learned and adapted in real time, weapons that targeted consciousness rather than matter. "You fought alone for months," the Varathi elder, now introduced as ancient historian Zentoth, spoke with newfound respect. "Protecting species you'd never met for no reward, facing extinction daily. Why?" Ambassador Brooks looked at her team, the diplomats, the soldiers, the engineers who had witnessed unimaginable horrors, yet continued serving. "Because someone had to. Because these things don't negotiate. Because if we hadn't fought them in the dark between stars, they would have eventually reached your worlds. And you never demanded recognition," Vexthor noted. "Even when we mocked your arrival, denied your requests, dismissed your warnings." "Recognition doesn't kill monsters," Captain Lisa Brown said quietly. She had just returned from another patrol, her crew moving with that distinctive human tension. Bullets kill monsters. Sacrifice kills monsters. Holding the line when everything tells you to run kills monsters. The chamber's automation systems chimed, indicating an incoming priority message. The tactical display shifted to show real-time sensor data. Energy signature detected, the automated voice announced. Multiple contacts approaching from Sector 12. Pattern matches known threat classifications. Alarms began wailing through the station. Alien crews scrambled to battle stations with panic barely concealed. But human crews moved differently, smoothly, efficiently, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Council command to human vessels. Vex Thor addressed them directly. Request immediate tactical consultation. John activated the Dakota's command systems. All human ships in standard defensive formation. Council vessels maintain perimeter positions. Follow our lead. These things respond to patterns they've seen before. But our ships are more advanced, Crack protested. Superior firepower. Better. Shielding. Didn't help last time, Mary pointed out gently. They copy your advancements, they can't copy experience. The approaching threats resolved on the displays. Not mirror ships this time, but something worse. Organic vessels that pulsed with biological energy. Ships that breathed and moved like massive predators. Biovessels, Steve Parker identified from the Dakota's tactical station. Standard pack, hunting formation. 12 primary entities plus spawner craft. How do you fight them? Tarvex asked, its earlier arrogance completely gone. Carefully, Henry Clark answered. They regenerate damage, learn from attacks, and their organic weapons. Target living tissue directly. But they have weaknesses. They always have weaknesses. The battle began with human ships taking point positions. Alien vessels watched as humanity's scarred fleet engaged with movements that seemed almost choreographed. Target prioritization that defied military doctrine. Weapons fire that struck specific organic zones rather than attempting overwhelming damage. They're not trying to destroy them, Zentoth observed with wonder. They're trying to disrupt their biological cohesion. Learned that the hard way. Captain Peter Williams had been monitoring from the sidelines but now joined the tactical discussion. Lost the entire scout wing before we figured out they share a biological link. Cut the neural connections, the pack loses coordination. The council watched as human tactics proved their worth. Not through superior technology, but through understanding, born of repeated exposure to death. Every human movement showed learned responses to threats the aliens hadn't even classified yet. Permission to implement council defensive protocols, the Zephan commanded, seeking human approval rather than expecting obedience. Granted, John nodded. But follow our targeting patterns. Your weapons are stronger than ours, but you need to hit specific points for maximum effect. The combined fleet worked together, but the hierarchy had changed. Alien vessels followed human tactical guidance, trusting the scars on human ships over their own advanced systems. Incoming biological torpedoes, the automated systems warned. Organic matter configured as projectile weapons. Scatter formation Delta, Mary Johnson called out. Human ships dispersed in a pattern that seemed random, but created perfect interlocking fields of fire. The alien ships hesitated, their tactical computers unable to predict such apparently chaotic movement. Follow them, Vex Thor commanded. Trust their experience. As council vessels mimicked human maneuvers, they discovered the pattern's logic. The biological torpedoes, guided by shared consciousness, crashed into each other rather than their intended targets. Human doctrine had learned to turn the enemy's strengths against them. Biopattern disruption successful, Steve reported as the enemy vessels began showing signs of confusion. Pack cohesion down 60%. Now we hit the spawner craft, Henry called out. Council vessels, concentrate fire on the largest biological mass. Humans will handle defensive screens. The battle turned with the coordinated assault. Alien ships finally working effectively with human tactical knowledge proved devastatingly successful. The biofleet retreated, but not before humanity's early warning systems detected more signatures at the edge of sensor range. They'll return, John said with certainty. They always return, stronger, smarter, with new adaptations. And we will be ready, Vexthor declared. Its crystalline form now pulsed with determination rather than confusion. All vessels maintain combat readiness. Human tactical doctrine is now primary protocol for station defenses. The council chamber reconvened after the battle. The atmosphere had completely transformed. Aliens stood when humans entered. Tactical. Stations displayed human battle maps as primary references. Requests for human assessment preceded standard procedure. Earth delegation, Vexthor announced formally. The council offers its deepest recognition. The honor guard position is permanently yours. Your ships will lead all defensive formations. Your tactical knowledge will be integrated into council military doctrine. And most importantly, Tarvex added, its melodic voice carrying genuine warmth. Your warnings will be heard, always, without question. Crack approached John directly. Supreme Commander Davis, as ranking military officer, I request cross-training for Zephon battle groups. Our warriors wish to learn human survival techniques. John smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown since arriving at council space. Granted. But fair warning, our training is hard and messy. And sometimes the only way to survive is to do things that go against everything your instincts tell you. We will learn, Crack promised, as you learned when you had no choice. Months later, the council station had been restructured. Human ships maintained positions at every defensive hardpoint. Alien crews rotated through human-led training programs, learning to fight threats that council space had pretended didn't exist. The bureaucratic nightmare was a memory, replaced by streamlined protocols that prioritized survival over paperwork. Human report submissions got immediate command attention. Resource requests were approved within hours rather than months. But the biggest change was visible on every ship in council space. Pristine alien vessels now bore scars with pride. Hull stains were no longer cleaned immediately but left as reminders. Battle damage went unrepaired just long enough for crews to understand what real combat meant. Captain Sarah Jenkins, newly arrived from Earth with fresh reinforcements, stood on her bridge watching the council station approach. Next to her, Varathi engineer Rix served as exchange officer, learning human systems while teaching advanced alien technology adaptation. Interesting approach pattern, Rix commented. Direct vector through what my people would call dangerous space. Sarah smiled. It's not dangerous if you know what you're doing, and if you're willing to bleed a little along the way. Through the viewport, the station grew larger, surrounded by the combined fleets of species working together. Human vessels stood alongside alien ships of every design, all bearing the marks of battles fought side by side. Captain, her communications officer reported, priority message from Council Command. They're requesting human tactical assessment for upcoming exploration mission. Deep space. High risk. Tell them we'll be ready, Sarah responded. We always are. Somewhere in the dark between stars, threats continued to move toward populated space. Mirror ships evolved new strategies. Bioships developed stronger pack dynamics. Reality warping entities tested dimensional barriers, but they no longer faced humanity alone. Council space had learned that survival sometimes required blood on the hull, that bureaucracy couldn't protect against nightmares, that sometimes the most advanced species were those who'd learned to fight with primitive tools and indomitable will. The blood on human ships had become a symbol across council space, not of battle or destruction, but of sacrifice and protection. New species joining the council underwent orientation by human instructors, learning that pride could be fatal, but humility kept you alive. And on quiet nights, when sensors detected new threats at the edge of known space, no one panicked. They simply called for human tactical assessment, confident that whatever nightmares the darkness held, someone had already faced them and lived to share the knowledge. Humanity had arrived late to the galactic community, but they had arrived when they were needed most. The blood on their ships told a story, not of primitive violence but of a species that stood between civilization and chaos, asking nothing in return but the chance to keep fighting. The council had learned to read that story, and in the years that followed, When others spoke of humanity's place in galactic history, they all agreed. Earth had arrived exactly when they were supposed to. Some stains never wash out. Some stains are meant to be preserved. Some stains remind entire civilizations that survival comes at a cost, paid by those willing to bleed for strangers they've never met. In council space, no one mocked the blood on human ships anymore. They saluted it.